Welcome back to the channel Coins Most Valuable. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most iconic and surprisingly valuable American coins ever made, the Jefferson Nickels. And trust me, collectors all across the United States are paying attention, because some of these ordinary-looking nickels hiding in pocket change have sold for shockingly high prices. If you think all nickels are worth just 5 cents, stay right here, because the truth is certain Jefferson nickels, from specific years, specific mint marks, and rare errors, can be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And in this video, I'm going to break down the real value, the hidden rarity, and the secrets that most collectors never talk about. So don't skip a second of this video. Watch all the way to the end so you don't miss the most valuable Jefferson nickel varieties that could be sitting in your home right now. And before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode from Coins Most Valuable. Let's get started. Coin number 1. Imagine holding a coin that feels like nothing more than a regular old nickel. But what if I told you that the 1938 Jefferson nickel with the S mint mark, the very first year this design was ever minted, can be worth far more than anyone expects? And what if I also told you that collectors across America have paid thousands of dollars for a single, perfectly preserved example? Stay right here, because as we get deeper into this video, you'll find out exactly why the 1938 S nickel is one of the most surprising and valuable early-date Jefferson nickels ever made. And yes, I'll reveal the highest recorded auction price of this exact coin, and at the number you absolutely need to hear. Now, before we get to the truly shocking value, let's set the scene. The year was 1938, a turning point. The Buffalo nickel, an icon of American coinage, was retired. In its place came a brand new design, the Jefferson nickel. And in that first year, the San Francisco Mint struck only around 4.1 million coins with the S mint mark. For modern coinage, that's a surprisingly low number. And that low mintage gives this coin a level of rarity that makes collectors across the United States pay very close attention whenever one shows up. So every time you see a 1938 nickel, flip it over, check that mint mark. And if it has the S, don't take your eyes off it. Because here's the truth. Even though millions were minted, most were struck softly, most entered circulation, and most lost their sharp details. And that's exactly why the few surviving examples with exceptional detail, especially those with the famous full steps, are considered some of the most desirable first-year Jefferson nickels. The steps of Monticello, on the reverse of a coin, often fail to strike completely, and that is the key that transforms a simple nickel into a high-value collectible. I want you to think about this. Out of more than 4 million 1938 S nickels minted, only a tiny fraction survive in high condition, and an even smaller fraction have clear, fully visible steps. This is why collectors go wild for these coins. The rarity isn't just about the mintage, it's about survival and quality. Imagine being one of the few collectors today who owns a razor-sharp, beautifully preserved 1938 S nickel with all the steps fully defined. That's the kind of coin that gets attention, competition, and serious money in auctions. Let's talk about everyday value first. If your 1938 S nickel has been circulated, maybe it's a little worn. Maybe the steps are flat. It still carries more value than face. Many circulated pieces are worth anywhere from a few cents up to a couple of dollars, depending on condition. But this is where the story flips, because once you move into uncirculated territory, especially with full steps, everything changes. That's when your nickel becomes a potential treasure. There are real auction records that prove just how much collectors are willing to pay for this rare coin. And the highest recorded auction price for a 1938 S Jefferson nickel is an incredible $9,200 for an example graded MS 67 with full steps. That's right, $9,200 for a nickel from pocket change. And don't miss what this means. If one sold for over $9,000, then even coins a grade below MS 66 full steps, MS 65 full steps can still bring in serious premiums. This is why collectors, dealers, and roll hunters search endlessly for this exact coin. Now imagine this scenario, because it actually happens. Someone is searching through a box of old coins from a relative or going through rolls from a bank, and suddenly, they spot a 1938 nickel. They flip it over and see that tiny S. Their heart jumps. Then they look closer, pull out a magnifier, check the steps, and they see sharp lines across Monticello. Full steps. That moment right there is exactly why people treasure hunt through old coins. Because a find like this, even today, can lead to a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the quality. Let's go a little deeper into how to identify value. When you hold the coin, tilt it under a light source. Look at the luster. Does it still shine, or does it look dull and worn? Are the fields clean and smooth, or filled with scratches? Now check the steps. The steps are where the magic happens. If every line is sharp, uninterrupted, perfectly defined, that's a big sign of value. And because the San Francisco Mint in 1938 had known issues with striking strength, finding crisp examples is not easy, which is exactly why full steps coins from this mint are so heavily sought after. Collectors also look at strike strength around Jefferson's face, hair, and jawline. A strong strike, bright luster, and clean fields make a tremendous difference. Even without full steps, an MS-65 or MS-66 coin from 1938 S can be valuable. But once you add full steps, the value multiplies. Something people often overlook is the story behind the coin, and stories create value. The 1938 S represents the beginning of a new era in American coinage. It's the first year of the Jefferson Nickels series, a design that still remains in circulation more than 8 decades later. Collectors love first-year issues because they mark the start of something historic. They represent a moment in time, a change, a transition, a new chapter. And that emotional connection matters. It drives demand, builds interest, and keeps value strong. Now let's talk about the market. Today's collectors are smarter, more connected, and more informed than ever before. They track auction results, study grading populations, and understand trends. And in the Jefferson Nickels series, full steps examples are among the hottest segments. The 1938 S is especially important because of that massive auction record of $9,200, which continues to influence market expectations. When a coin sets a record like that, it doesn't just affect one sale. It increases demand across the entire grade range. If you have a 1938 S nickel, you should absolutely examine it carefully. Even a non-full steps MS coin can bring good value. But if you find full steps, consider having it graded professionally. A certified grade provides verification, protection, and can dramatically increase what collectors are willing to pay. Another powerful aspect of the 1938 S nickel is how accessible it still is. Many valuable coins are nearly impossible to find outside of specialized auctions, but the 1938 S Jefferson Nickels still appears in collections, jars, inherited sets, and old rolls. This means you have a real chance, today, to find one. And that's part of the excitement. Every time you look at a handful of old nickels, you might be holding quiet treasure. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're looking through a roll of old nickels, and suddenly the date 1938 pops out. You turn it over, see the S, and instantly feel that rush, that possibility. You check the steps, the luster, the fields. You realize this little nickel, smaller than a quarter and easy to ignore, is actually a valuable piece of American coin history. That is why coin collecting and coin searching continues to grow in popularity across the United States, because finds like this really happen. And they happen to everyday people. The 1938 S Jefferson Nickel has everything that makes a coin valuable. Low mintage, historical importance, the first year of a legendary design, strike variations, condition rarity, and a record-breaking auction sale that has turned it into a must-watch coin for collectors. If you ever come across one, take the time to examine it carefully. And if you already have one in your collection, take care of it, because this is a coin worth preserving. This coin is valuable, it is collectible, and it is one of the most exciting early-date Jefferson Nickels you can find. And whether it's worth a few dollars or thousands of dollars, the thrill of discovering one is something every coin enthusiast understands. And that highest price of $9,200 stands as proof that even nickel, a tiny 5-cent coin, can become a powerful piece of treasure when the right conditions align. Coin number 2. Imagine holding an ordinary nickel from 1940, a coin that looks simple, common, and easy to overlook. But what if I told you that the 1940 Jefferson nickel, with no mint mark, a coin struck in Philadelphia at a time when America was just beginning to recover from a Great Depression, can actually be worth far more than 5 cents? What if I told you that exceptional examples of this same nickel have brought in thousands of dollars at auction? And what if I told you that inside this video, you're going to learn exactly why collectors across the United States keep searching for this coin, how to identify the valuable ones, and the real highest recorded price this nickel ever sold for? Stay right here, because the deeper we go, the more valuable this 1940 no mint mark Jefferson nickel becomes. Let's begin with the history that gives this coin so much power. The year 1940 sits right before the turning point of World War II. The United States was ramping up production, industries were growing, and coins were moving through circulation at enormous speed. During this time, the Philadelphia Mint produced millions of nickels. But what matters most isn't just how many were made, but how many survived in truly high condition. Most of the 1940 Jefferson nickels saw years of heavy circulation. Pockets, banks, factories, wartime commerce. All of this wore the coins down. That is exactly why truly sharp, fully detailed, well-struck examples from 1940 stand out today and command serious collector demand. When you look at a Jefferson nickel from 1940 with no mint mark, you're holding a coin that represents an entire era of American life, an era of transformation, tension, and rebuilding. But beyond its historical meaning, this coin has one thing that makes collectors across the country pay close attention: condition rarity. Because although the Philadelphia Mint struck many of these coins, almost all of them were used in everyday circulation. Only a small fraction remain in pristine mint state condition, and an even smaller fraction show that special feature collectors love: full steps. Those full steps on Monticello, the clean, sharp lines at the bottom of the building, are where the value transforms. The steps are extremely difficult to find fully intact on a 1940 no mint mark nickel. Weak strikes were common, and most coins lost detail quickly in circulation. So when you find one with every step fully defined, sharp, uninterrupted, it becomes a completely different tier of rarity. That is the magic of the full steps designation. And it's one of the major reasons the 1940 Jefferson nickel can jump in value. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where the story becomes even more surprising. Ordinary circulated 1940 nickels with no mint mark might be worth anywhere from a few cents to a couple of dollars. A nicer circulated piece might bring a little more, especially if it has good detail and natural luster. But in uncirculated condition, the value begins to climb. Many 1940 no mint mark nickels in mint state grades can sell for tens or even over $100. But once again, the real power comes from the full step strike. And here is the part you've been waiting for, the moment that shows you just how valuable this ordinary coin can be. The highest price ever recorded for a 1940 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark is an incredible $21,600, paid at auction for an example graded MS. 67 plus full steps, $21,600 for a nickel made over 80 years ago. That is not a myth. That is not an exaggeration. That is a real sale, a real auction, and a real example of how valuable this coin can become under the right conditions. A coin that cost 5 cents when it was made sold for more than some cars today. That's the power of rarity, condition, and collector demand. Now imagine being the person who found that coin. Maybe it came from an old jar of coins left behind by a family member. Maybe it came from a roll someone picked up at the bank decades ago. Maybe it came from a collection that sat forgotten in a closet. You open that roll, you check the date, and there it is, 1940. You flip it over, and it has no mint mark, meaning it came from Philadelphia. You look closer, take out a magnifier, tilt it in the light, and suddenly the steps appear crisp, sharp, fully detailed. You hold your breath for a moment because you realize you might be looking at something extremely valuable. That feeling, the rush, the possibility, is exactly why collectors across America keep hunting for Jefferson Nickels. Let's talk more about identifying value. When you find a 1940 nickel, start by checking the luster. Luster is the natural shine produced by the mint when the coin is struck. Coins with strong luster have not been heavily worn, and that's a good sign. Next, check the fields, the flat areas on the coin, for scratches, spots, or marks. Fewer marks mean higher grades. Look closely at Jefferson's profile. His cheek, his jawline, his hair. These areas show wear quickly, so sharp detail means better preservation. Then comes the most important part, Monticello. The steps at the bottom of the building tell you almost everything about potential high-grade value. If you see crisp, separate step lines, count them. You want all steps to be visible with no breaks. The more clearly defined they are, the closer your coin is to the elite full steps category. And if your coin has full steps and still maintains strong luster with minimal marks, that's when you enter serious collector territory. But there's another secret to this coin, strike variations. Not all 1940 nickels were struck equally. Some were struck with fresh dies that produced sharp detail, while others were struck late in the die's life, showing weakness and flat areas. A strong strike plus full steps plus high mint state equals major value. This combination explains exactly why the record-setting 1940 nickel was able to reach over $21,000. Let's also talk about rarity in a different way, population rarity. Professional grading services track how many coins exist at each grade level. For the 1940 no mint mark nickel, mint state examples are not extremely rare, but high-grade full steps examples are. And coins at the very top of the grading scale, like MS 67 Plus with full steps, are extremely rare. That's why the auction price reached such an extraordinary level. Now think about market demand. Jefferson nickel collectors are passionate. They compete for the best coins, especially early-date issues. And because the 1940 no mint mark nickel has such a massive record price attached to it, more collectors than ever are paying attention to this date. This increases buyer interest, increases competition, and pushes values higher for the best examples. But here's something most people don't realize. This coin is still findable. That's what makes it so exciting. People still find 1940 nickels in old collections, in old bags, in rolls from decades ago. And every discovery has the chance to be something special. That's why every time you come across a nickel from the early 1940s, you should never dismiss it. Let me describe a real-life moment that happens more often than you think. Someone is searching through inherited coins from an old cigar box. They're expecting nothing special, maybe a few weak pennies, maybe a silver dime. Then they reach in, pull out a nickel, and see the date, 1940. The coin looks bright, sharp, maybe even untouched. They flip it over, examine the steps, and suddenly the coin that seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary. That emotional moment is what makes coin collecting such a powerful hobby. And that's why understanding this coin is so important. So what makes the 1940 Jefferson nickel, with no mint mark, so valuable? It's the perfect combination. History, design, survival rarity, strike rarity, condition rarity, and record-setting auction performance. This coin represents America before the war, represents the early years of the Jefferson Nickels series, and represents a moment when a simple nickel becomes a treasure. And that highest price, again, $21,600 at auction, proves beyond a doubt that this coin is valuable. Not just theoretically valuable. Not maybe, not possibly. Proven, documented, real value. That number has changed the way collectors view this date forever. If you have a 1940 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, take the time to examine it closely. If you haven't checked your old coins, now is the time. And if you're ever searching rolls or boxes of nickels, keep your eyes open, because the next major discovery might be in your hands. Coin number 3. There's something fascinating about the most ordinary-looking coins turning out to be the ones collectors chase the hardest. And the 1964 Jefferson nickel with the D mint mark is one of the best examples of that hidden value surprise. Even though millions of people handled these nickels in their daily lives, very few realize that one rare high-grade example sold for an unbelievable $6,325 at auction. proving this coin can be far more valuable than anyone expects. And today, you're going to hear the full story of why this specific nickel from 1964 has collectors searching rolls, drawers, jars, and inherited collections all across America. The year 1964 was one of the most intense years in U.S. coinage history. The nation was dealing with a severe coin shortage. People were hoarding change, silver coins were vanishing from circulation, and the mint was producing coins at an extremely high speed. Because of the pressure to create huge numbers of coins as quickly as possible, the Denver Mint struck billions of nickels that year. But rushing production had a big consequence. Strike quality suffered. Many coins came out weakly struck, with soft details, blurry steps on Monticello, and surfaces that picked up marks easily during the minting process. That is exactly why the 1964 Jefferson Nickel has become so interesting to collectors. It's one of the most common coins of the decade, but high-grade examples with sharp details are extremely rare. You can find circulated pieces everywhere, in old change, rolls, even in pocket change, but finding one with crisp luster, sharp steps, and mint-state surfaces is a real challenge. Imagine holding a 1964 nickel under bright light. The luster should roll across the coin like a wave. Jefferson's profile should be bold, with detail in his hair, cheekbone, and jawline. And when you flip it over, the Monticello building should have strong clarity, and the steps at the bottom should show separation. Most 1964 nickels fail this test, especially the step detail. That's why the rare full steps examples are so valuable. They absolutely stand out. Collectors refer to these as FS coins, short for full steps. To qualify, the steps must be fully struck and clearly separated. Even the smallest nick, rub, or weak strike can cause the steps to merge. Because 1964 nickels were produced with such high speed and heavy die usage, full steps examples are unbelievably hard to find. This scarcity has made them one of the hottest varieties in Jefferson nickel collecting. And this leads us to the most astonishing part. The highest auction price for a 1964 Jefferson nickel reached $6,325 for a coin graded MS 66 with full steps. This is the kind of price that transforms an everyday coin into a treasure hunt target. A nickel from 1964, the most mass-produced year in the entire Jefferson series, sold for more than $6,000 simply because it was preserved perfectly and struck sharply. Now picture this scenario. You're going through an old coin jar left behind by a parent or grandparent. You find a handful of old nickels. You tilt one in the light, and instead of a dull surface, you see original mint luster. You flip it over and notice the steps, clean, separate, and complete. In that moment, you realize you might be holding something special. That experience is exactly what makes this coin so exciting for collectors and beginners alike. Condition is everything with this coin. If the fields, the flat areas around the portrait, are clean and free of distracting marks, the coin instantly becomes more desirable. If Jefferson's hair and cheek show detail without flattening, the grade rises. If the rims are sharp and the reverse is clean, the coin gains even more appeal. But above all, the steps must be examined carefully. A single break in the steps can cut the value dramatically. Another factor that adds to the mystery of the 1964 nickel is die variety and die state. Because the mint used dies heavily that year, many coins show die wear. Coins from fresh dies can have stronger detail than those from worn dies. That's why some nickels from 1964 appear sharp while others look soft even, without circulation. This inconsistency makes the search even more thrilling and makes the true full steps examples even more prized. Collectors also appreciate this coin because it marks the end of an era. After 1964, the mint stopped placing dates on proof coins for several years and was under massive pressure to keep up with demand. The 1964 Denver nickel represents the peak of the coin shortage period and the final year before major design changes and shifts in U.S. coin production strategy. Let's think about the hunt for a moment. Roll hunters across America still search thousands of nickels, hoping to find a high-grade 1964 D. Even though millions of these coins exist, only a fraction remain in mint state condition, and only an ultra-small portion of those earn the full steps designation. That's why these coins command such big premiums at auction. Rarity doesn't always come from low mintage. Sometimes it comes from condition, strike quality, and survival. And that's exactly the case with the 1964 D nickel. Most were spent. Most were worn down. Most never even had full steps to begin with because of the rushed minting process. So when a jewel-like survivor does appear, a coin with blazing luster, clean fields, and perfect steps, collectors compete fiercely for it. Now imagine someone discovering a high-grade example by accident. Maybe it was pulled from circulation decades ago and stored in a jar without ever entering daily use. Maybe someone set it aside without knowing why. That single moment of chance preservation is what turns an ordinary nickel into a rare collectible. It's this element of discovery that keeps collectors searching, hoping, and examining every detail. If you have a 1964 D. Jefferson nickel, take the time to look closely. Tilt the coin. Study the portrait. Inspect the reverse with a bright light and a magnifier. The surfaces should be smooth. The steps should be present. The texture should still hold its mint glow. If it looks special, protect it immediately. Avoid touching the fields. Avoid cleaning. And consider having high-quality coins evaluated professionally, especially if the steps are sharp. This coin story is the perfect example of how a common date can become an uncommon treasure. The value isn't in the mintage, it's in the survivors. The sharpest strikes, the cleanest surfaces, the most detailed steps. These are the things that transform a 1964 D nickel from pocket change into a highly valuable collector piece. And with the highest auction sale reaching $6,325, collectors know the potential is real. It's not hype. It's not theory. It's proven. A beautifully preserved 1964 D nickel can bring in serious money. That's why roll hunters, coin shop owners, collectors, and hobbyists always pay close attention to this date and mint mark. So whenever you come across a 1964 D. Jefferson nickel, treat it as a real opportunity. Look at it carefully. Appreciate the history behind it. Understand the rarity of high-grade survivors. And always remember that this coin, a coin that millions of Americans spent without thinking twice, might very well be one of the hidden gems of modern American numismatics. Coin number 4, every so often, a coin that most people overlook turns out to be one of the most surprising treasures hiding in American pocket change. And the 1976 Jefferson nickel with the D mint mark is one of those coins that collectors across the country still examine very closely. It may seem like an ordinary modern nickel, but when you understand its history, the striking variations, and the rare high-grade survivors, you begin to realize why this coin has shocked collectors at auctions. And yes, the highest known auction price for a 1976 D. Jefferson nickel reached over $2,800 for a top-quality MS 67 full steps example. That's right, nearly $3,000 for a nickel minted in the mid-1970s. To understand why, we need to step back and look at the year 1976. America was celebrating its bicentennial, 200 years of independence. You saw quarters, half dollars, and dollars with special dual dates, 1776 to 1976. But what many people don't realize is that the nickel did not get a bicentennial design. The Jefferson nickel struck in 1976, including the Denver minted version, kept its classic Monticello design. Even though it didn't change designs, collectors remember this year vividly, and coins from this period carry nostalgia, historical appeal, and in rare cases, significant value. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of these coins, which makes most 1976 D nickels common. But the value doesn't come from the mintage. The value comes from condition, because finding a well-struck, flawless, high-grade nickel from this year is incredibly hard. Most of these coins saw heavy circulation. Kids used them for arcade games, families used them for gas during the inflation era, and they passed through millions of hands. That means scratches, nicks, dull fields, and worn steps on Monticello became extremely common. And that's exactly why collectors chase pristine examples. High-grade nickels with full steps are rare for this year. Full steps refer to the steps on the Monticello building on the reverse. When they are complete, fully separated, and sharply struck, the coin jumps dramatically in value. The Denver Mint sometimes struggled with strike quality in the 1970s, so sharply struck 1976. D coins with full steps are genuinely difficult to find. Imagine holding a 1976 D nickel that still has its original luster, a bright, glossy shine that moves across the coin as you tilt it. The surface looks smooth and untouched. The steps on Monticello are crisp and fully defined. Those are the coins that stand out, and those are the coins that grading services reward with high mint state grades. And this is where serious value enters the picture. While most circulated 1976 D nickels are worth face value, a high-grade example can be worth serious money. One of the most stunning examples ever sold at auction, graded MS 67 with full steps, brought in over $2,800. That is the power of condition rarity. Out of the millions minted, only a tiny fraction survived with such exceptional detail. Now imagine this scenario. You're going through a coin jar, or maybe an old roll of nickels you stored away years ago. You spot a 1976 D. At first, it looks like any other nickel. But when you take a closer look, the coin seems unusually sharp. You tilt it under the light, and the luster dances across the fields. You flip it over and look closely at Monticello, and the steps are all there, clean, crisp, and separated. That moment is exciting because you realize you might have found something that the average person would spend without a second thought, but a collector would pay premium money to own. To evaluate a 1976 D Jefferson nickel, start by checking the surfaces. A coin with large scratches, dull patches, or heavy marks from circulation will not be worth much. You want clean fields, sharp details, and strong luster. Next, examine Jefferson's portrait. His cheek, hair, and collar should be fully detailed, without the flattening that heavy wear creates. Then look at the rim. Sharp rims indicate a coin that hasn't circulated much. But the real decision point, the make or break feature, is the reverse steps. Full steps examples are the kings of value for this year. Look for full separation between the horizontal step lines. Even one line of merging can lower the coin's value significantly. That's how competitive collectors are when it comes to full steps designations. Strike quality also plays a huge role in value. Even coins that never circulated can have weak steps if the die didn't strike deeply enough. That's why high-grade, full-step survivors are extremely rare. They require both perfect preservation and a perfect strike. Now, let's talk about population rarity. Grade population reports show that only a tiny number of MS 67 full steps coins exist for the 1976 D nickel. This scarcity drives the price up. Collectors who build full steps nickel sets are willing to pay big money for tough dates, and 1976 D is a sleeper rarity that many people overlook. Think about how many millions of these coins passed through hands in 1976. Grocery stores, gas stations, movie theaters, stadiums, nickels traveled everywhere. And yet, only a handful remain today that are worthy of high-grade certification. That's exactly why this coin, in elite condition, can reach the $1,000 range. Even more modest mint state coins without full steps can bring in premiums because collectors enjoy building high-quality sets. There's also historical charm. Even though the nickel didn't receive a bicentennial design, it remains tied to one of the most patriotic, memorable years in American history. For many collectors, owning a pristine coin from 1976 feels like owning a glittering fragment of the country's 200-year celebration, a small piece of a bigger story. If you find a 1976 D nickel that looks promising, protect it immediately. Don't clean it. Cleaning destroys value. Store it safely, take clear photos, and if it appears to have full steps or sharp uncirculated brilliance, consider getting it graded. A certified mint state example can turn an ordinary pocket find into a valuable collectible. Now just imagine for a moment, you're holding a nickel that someone in 1976 may have carried during bicentennial parades, celebrations, or even visits to national landmarks. A small coin with a big story. And, in the right condition, it's worth much more than anyone from that era could have imagined. So yes, the 1976 D. Jefferson nickel is absolutely a coin worth checking. It's a modern-era coin with surprising potential. It's a coin that rewards attention to detail. And it's a coin that proves that even the most common denominations can hide valuable secrets. Whether you're searching rolls, checking old jars, or exploring inherited collections, always take a close look at your 1976 D. Nickels, because one of them might be a sleeper gem just waiting to be discovered, just like the one that sold for over $2,800 at auction. Coin number 5. There's something special about coins from the early 1960s. And the 1962 Jefferson nickel with the D mint mark is one of those coins that continues to surprise collectors with its hidden value. It's a coin that most people spent without thinking twice. Yet a rare high-grade example of this exact nickel once sold for an incredible $3,525 at auction. Yes, more than $3,000 for a nickel minted in 1962. And today, you're going to hear exactly why that happened, what makes this coin valuable, and what collectors look for when deciding how much a 1962 D nickel is worth. The early 1960s were a turbulent time in U.S. coinage. Silver coins were still circulating. The demand for change was rising, and the U.S. Mint was already gearing up for the coin shortage that would explode just a few years later. During this period, the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of coins every single day, including Jefferson Nickels. The problem was that high-speed production didn't always equal high quality. Many coins came out with weak strikes, soft details, worn dies, and surfaces that easily picked up marks during minting. This is where the value of the 1962 D nickel begins. Even though it isn't rare by mintage, the number of high-grade survivors is shockingly low. Finding one with strong details, crisp luster, and clean surfaces is very difficult. Most 1962 D nickels circulated for decades, leaving scratches, dull fields, worn steps, and flat details behind. But every now and then, a collector discovers a sharply struck coin with its original mint brilliance still intact. And that's where the treasure lies. To understand why 1962 D. Jefferson Nickels can be valuable, you have to understand one feature that completely transforms their price: full steps. On the reverse side, at the base of Monticello, there are stairs that should appear as separate, sharp lines if the coin was struck well. Collectors consider full steps the gold standard of strike quality. But finding full steps on a 1962 D nickel is tough because Denver's dies in 1962 were used heavily and often produced soft, weakly struck steps. That's why a full steps example is so valuable. They are rare, desirable, and highly competitive among collectors. And that's exactly why one of these 1962 D nickels with exceptional quality sold for $3,525 at auction, one of the highest ever recorded for this date and mint mark. That sale wasn't an accident. It happened because condition, rarity, and strike quality aligned perfectly on that one special coin. Now imagine holding a 1962 D nickel and tilting it under the light. If it looks flat or dull, it's likely a circulated piece. But if the luster rolls across the surface like a wave, if Jefferson's cheek and collar look bold and untouched, and if the reverse shines with crisp detail, then you might have something worth far more than 5 cents. When you look closer and see that the steps at Monticello are separated, truly separated, that's when excitement kicks in. Collectors evaluate every detail of this coin. They check the fields, looking for clean, smooth surfaces. They inspect Jefferson's hair and cheekbone to see if the high points retain sharp detail. They check the rim to ensure it's sharp and unworn. And most importantly, they zoom in on the steps, knowing that even the slightest weakness or contact mark can affect the full steps designation. Many 1962 D nickels show die, meaning the dies had been used too long. That results in soft detail, even if the coin never circulated. This is why full steps coins are so scarce. They required a fresh die, a perfect strike, and immediate preservation to survive in top condition. Collectors who specialize in Jefferson Nickels know this date is tricky. It seems common, but high-grade examples are surprisingly hard to find. The Denver Mint struck over 280 million nickels that year, yet only a tiny fraction qualify as truly premium pieces today. Most circulated heavily during the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, leaving only a few untouched survivors. Now imagine someone searching rolls at a bank. They open a nickel roll and see a shiny coin from the early 60s. They pick it up, examine it, and suddenly realize it's a 1962 D with sharp lines and natural luster. When they flip it over and see the steps clearly separated, that moment becomes unforgettable. That's the thrill of coin collecting, the possibility that something incredible is hiding in plain sight. The history behind this coin adds to its appeal. In 1962, the United States was in the midst of change. The Kennedy era, rising tensions worldwide, booming American industry, and a rapidly growing economy. Coins from this period reflect that economic movement. The Jefferson nickel was a workhorse coin, used in vending machines, stores, schools, and transportation across the country. Billions of them circulated. That's why pristine coins are so scarce. They were meant to be used, not saved. If you have a 1962 D Jefferson nickel, take a moment to examine it carefully. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Look for signs of original luster. Study Jefferson's profile. Check the reverse for step detail. If you think the coin looks better than average, set it aside. Even coins without full steps can be valuable in high grades, especially MS 65 and above, because collectors enjoy completing high-quality sets. If the coin has clean fields, strong strike, minimal marks, and excellent luster, you may want to protect it immediately. Store it safely and avoid cleaning it. Cleaning removes value instantly. If the steps look complete or nearly complete, the coin might be worth having evaluated professionally. Think about this for a moment. A small Denver nickel from 1962, a coin millions of people spent without thinking, has the potential to be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars if preserved perfectly. And the auction record of $3,525 proves it. That's real money. That's real collector demand. And that's why this coin holds a special place in the world of modern U.S. numismatics. The 1962 D Jefferson nickel reminds collectors that rarity isn't always about low mintage. Sometimes rarity is about survival. Sometimes it's about strike quality. Sometimes it's about the unforgiving standards collectors use when chasing perfection. And sometimes it's simply about being one of the few coins that avoided decades of circulation. So if you ever come across a 1962 D Jefferson nickel, whether in an old box, a roll of coins, a family collection, or even loose change, take a closer look. Because this is one of those coins that can surprise you, reward you, and connect you to a moment in American history all at once. And if the steps are sharp and the luster is brilliant, you may be holding one of the rare survivors capable of reaching values like the $3,525 auction record. Thank you so much for watching and exploring the fascinating world of Jefferson Nickels with me today. These coins from a 1938 S mint mark to the 1976 D and everything in between hold incredible history, rare value, and collectible potential that continues to surprise collectors across the United States. If you enjoyed this deep dive, I highly encourage you to check out my other video on Lincoln Wheat pennies. Just like these nickels, those pennies tell a story, hold significant value, and are a must-see for anyone passionate about rare coins. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss another video about valuable coins. Like and share this video to help fellow collectors discover these hidden treasures. And drop a comment below sharing which coin caught your attention the most. I love hearing from viewers like you. Remember, every coin has a story, every collector has a journey, and your next rare find could be just around the corner. Stay curious, stay collecting, and I'll see you in the next video.